Veterans Day is coming up soon on November 11th, and it's the perfect time to thank those who have served to protect our country's freedom. On this episode, hear from 3 Johnson County veterans and get all of the details you need about the county's Veterans Day event, back in person.
Whether you live in or just love Johnson County, Kansas, JoCo on the Go has everything Johnson County. Here's what's happening and what's coming up in the community you call home.
Thanks so much for joining us for JoCo on the Go. I'm your host, Jody Hanson, a Johnson County resident and employee of Johnson County government. I am so honored to have 3 veterans with me today. I have to start, first of all, by just thanking you all for your service, and thank you for being here today. It's nice to see all of you. What I'm going to do now is to introduce you one by one. And so when I say your name, please just share kind of a brief overview of your service. So why don't we start with retired Kansas Army National Major General Gene Cross, who's a Kansas native and now lives in Lenexa. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was fortunate in my assignment with regard to, I was actually a full-time guardsman and a traditional guardsman. So I had dual assignments many times. So I was fortunate to spend most of my career in command. So I was absolutely dealing with soldiers almost my whole life with regard to trying to make things better for them so that they could succeed in the things they wanted to do. So I commanded all the way from a squad leader to a division commander.
Wow, that sounds pretty impressive and sounds like you helped a lot of people. Next, we have Rihanna Ray with us. So I'd like to introduce her. And Rihanna, tell us a little bit about you and your military service.
I did 8.5 years active duty United States Army. I was a 92 Foxtrot, was the fuel supply specialist and a heavy equipment operator. And I was medically retired in 2015.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your service. And finally, I'd like to introduce Gerald Hay, whom I have the pleasure to work with every day. He works here at the county with us in the Public Information Office. So Gerald, tell us a little bit about your military career.
I'm a Marine veteran, got out of service as a sergeant. I was in Vietnam, Dong Ha and Khe Sanh from 1966 to 68, back-to-back combat tours. Because at the time, basically, they only would guarantee 6 months stateside and you would go back. So I decided to get it all in 2-year, service. Basically, I was in the infantry and we had a lot of unfriendly people up in that area.
Well, Gerald, we are so lucky to have you on our team and in your role. And so thank you all for being here again. And again, thank you for your service. Gerald, I'm going to start with you. Several county staff work together every year to plan Johnson County's Veterans Day event. But you really are the heart and soul of the event. And I'd love to hear from you a bit about how long the county has done a Veterans Day observance and how it began.
Okay. Well, we started back in my reporting days in 1987 and started on the courthouse steps, the south courthouse steps of the old courthouse. And we were there for about 10 years. And then we moved it to the old way to Armory for about 10 years. And for the last 15 years or so, we basically rotated in 6 cities at veterans parks and facilities. So, and this will be our 36th year, but the last 2 years we've been doing it virtual and by Zoom. Videos and Zoom. So this is the first actual in-person celebration in 3 years. So it's glad to be back in a gathering. I do miss that.
I agree, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too. It's going to be nice to get together back in person again. So, Gerald, we're going to come back to you in a little bit to give us more details about this year's observance. But General Cross, I'd like to hear from you a little bit more. You're going to be the featured speaker at our event this year, so we're very excited about that and grateful. I was hoping you could go into a little more detail and tell us more about your military career.
Okay. I started as a heavy weapons infantryman, mortars and recoilless rifles back in the day, and I stayed infantry branch, and I served in all from platoon leader to company commander a couple of times, operations officers, and at a battalion commander. Then I was a brigade operations officer, brigade commander. Then my full-time assignments, I served as the chief of staff for a couple of general officers, went to all the standard education things that officers do, infantry advanced and command and general staff college up here at Leavenworth and the Army War College and those kinds of things. And we touched a little bit on Vietnam. I mentioned that I was a rifle platoon leader in a air assault battalion in Mekong Delta. And so you can see from part of my decorations there that we were involved in some heavy combat. So there with units. And basically what we do is we would, in the day, they called it jitterbugging. We would air assault a platoon at a time, different targets all over the Mekong Delta. And then wherever we made contact, then they would lift other units in and we'd establish a battle, and some turned into brigade size. We had at one battle, there were 5 battalions involved. So with artillery and all of that. So one of the things that my soldiers appreciated, being a former mortarman, I could call fire. I didn't have to have a forward observer. I knew how to do that. So I trained my radio operator to flip over to the artillery system, and I could talk to close air and artillery. And so anyway, that was the extent of it, and ended up with my career with, of course, initially we were also focused on the Soviet Union, and we had a lot of exercises in Europe, those kinds of things. And then eventually that as NATO broke up, or I'm sorry, the Warsaw Pact broke up, they had missions to help train other armies, including the Polish army and those. Initially, we actually trained with, helped the Ukrainians a little bit and the Georgians and all kinds of security missions in Europe. We were a European-oriented unit, the 35th Division, still are.
So out of everything you've been through and experienced, does anything stand out to you? Is there a certain story or a certain memory that stands out to you as sort of a highlight of your service?
Well, other than combat stories, one of the things I was most proud of that when we had external evaluators come in and evaluate when I was an infantry battalion commander, and the write-up from them that they talked about for all the infantry battalions they had evaluated, this is the very best they had served, they had observed. And of course, it was all the great non-commissioned officers in the unit, good officers, but absolutely a command sergeant major and all the first sergeants were just excellent. And so very, very proud of that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Rihanna, let's turn to you with sort of a similar question. Can you talk a little bit more about your time in the Army and a highlight of your service?
I only had one deployment. That was to Iraq in 2009, 2010. I do not wear the accolades that he does, but I think the biggest, the most important part of my Army career was when I was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. That's who I deployed with the 2nd Infantry Division. The leaders that I had, the NCOs, leaders all up the chain were just great and amazing. And they molded me into the soldier that I was. They molded me in for deployment. And into the person that I am today. And I hold them very close to my heart. And I still am very close with a lot of them. So that's my most meaningful, is all of them.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if you kept in touch with people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We have, now that Facebook is a thing, it started back then. So we get to stay in contact through like our different company, battalion, brigade, on Facebook and stuff like that. So,
oh, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Now, Rihanna, I understand that you graduated from the Johnson County Veterans Treatment Court just this past August. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Now, for those who might not know what that program is, can you tell us about it?
So it's a treatment course specifically for veterans who have a substance abuse or mental health disorder that, to say the least, have come in contact with the law in some way, shape, or form. To me, I would say that it's a second chance to really turn your life around. And in my case, upon completion of the course, I mean, it's very rigorous. It's very demanding. They hold you accountable for everything. And I mean, it's just a huge healing journey. So when I finished, the charges that I had gotten were dismissed. And now with the new law in Kansas, with the you can get it expunged immediately. There is nothing on my record anymore. My slate was wiped clean. I got to start over. My amazing team, the Veterans Treatment Court team that I had, that program saved my life. If it hadn't been for that, there would have been no way that I could have had a job. I had struggled through the beginning of Veterans Treatment Court of trying to get a job. And because of the record, I was unsuccessful. And so I put in a lot of work. I had my team behind me, pushing me, always. And it's an amazing program. They're trying to get more of them across the United States. And it's amazing, to say the least. It gave me back my life.
Oh, that's very admirable. I'm so glad that you had that experience and had such a good success with it. I think I've heard it. There's about 57 veterans, including your recent class, that have gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And you graduated with 3 others, right?
Yep, others.
That's great. And it started back in 2016. And I believe the next graduation is coming up in December.
Okay.
So we'll be watching for that. But anything else you'd like to share about that program?
I mean, I can't say enough for the people that were behind me through my whole journey. It's not easy, but if you're ready to get your life back on track and you want to be different, it made me the person, my true self again. It brought me to have a lot of peace in my life again. And it's an amazing opportunity.
Well, good. Thank you. And thank you for being willing to share that story and share that experience. Hopefully others will hear it and think that maybe it's something that they can also participate in.
I hope so.
You did, yeah. So Gerald, let's go back to you. And I'd love to hear whatever details you can share with us about this year's Veterans Day observance, sort of what we need to know, the where, the when, what to expect, that kind of thing.
Well, it's going to be at the Kansas Army National Guard Armory in Lenexa, and that's 18200 West 87th Street, which is due west of the Lenexa City Square, or center, I should say. And it's on the north side of the road. It's sandwiched in between a school and the park and rec fields, so it's easy to spot. And we have a lot of participants. We're veterans groups are going to be are helping us. They're going to provide a chaplain. They're going to provide representers, and we have 2 schools. And schools are always important to this event because I always want to involve students. And the Olathe Northwest Band is coming. That's 138 students, so you should be able to hear the music. And then students, the 5th and 6th grade students from Sunflower Elementary School in Lenexa are joining us too. And that's 45 students. So I think, they will be able to hear them singing. And what I do when I organize a Veterans Day, we have traditional music, the national anthem, God Bless America, and the March of the Armed Forces. But I also want the students to pick out their own selections. And, usually, especially with the choir, I don't know all the songs. It goes from Yankee Doodle Dandy to, Boogie Woogie Boy. So, the students picked out, I believe, 5 or 6 songs that they want to perform. 2 of them I have never heard. So I'll be listening to them because I know their involvement and they're rehearsing quite hard. And I know they're going to be doing a great job. We also have the Rifle Salute, which is tradition, Echo Taps, and Chairman Eiler from the Board of County Commissioners will be navigating it through the program as the MC. So the event itself, I was estimate will last probably 40 to 45 minutes.
Thank you. I know you work very hard every year to get it planned and get it organized. So, and it's a great benefit to the community. And so just a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. It's back in person, first time since 2019, but we also do live stream it on Facebook. And we also show it live on our website for those who can't make it in person, but still want to participate. And so the best way to find that is to go to our website, jocogov.org/JoCo Honors Vets. But it's free to the public. You don't have to register in advance. And Gerald, usually how many people do we get that attend, would you say?
Usually between 250 and 300. And since this is the first event in 3 years, it might be a little bit more than that, because I think people who want to honor our veterans will be excited to actually see them and meet them and visit with them.
Well, great. Thank you for all that detail. Just one last question I had for all of you, and maybe we can start with General Cross. I would just love to hear, what does Veterans Day mean to you, and why do you think it's important that the community recognize Veterans Day?
Well, I think, in my view, the veterans get some recognition, but their families really don't. And I think that's the piece that when we honor the veterans on Veterans Day, it also honor the families for all the things that they've done on behalf of our veterans. Just like my wife, many times I was temporary duty, she was gone. And my joke with her was, if you sell the house and move, give me the new address.
Yeah, that's true. That's something we don't maybe always think about, is not only the sacrifice that the veterans make, but the sacrifice that their families make, and kind of the pressure it can put on people. So that's a great point to think about the families too on Veterans Day. Rihanna, how about you? What does Veterans Day mean to you?
It means everything to me. Me and my husband are both veterans, and a lot of the times the sacrifices that we make for serving our country are unseen things like PTSD and veteran suicide and things like that. And I think to take a day to really honor veterans is a noble day. We've sacrificed a lot. Our families have sacrificed a lot. The transition out of the military is a hard one. I don't want people to forget why we do the things that we do, why we make the sacrifices that we make to serve our country. And I think Veterans Day is a great day to show just that.
That's some great thoughts there. Gerald, what about you? I know you've got some thoughts on the importance of observing this day, and you've got a lot of passion on it, obviously. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm from a military family. My father was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge, and my uncle basically was in the fifth wave of troops at Normandy, and he was wounded in Normandy, but it was a walking wounded, so he stayed and continued fighting. He got not the Bronze Star, but the Silver Star. And basically, what I learned later from my uncle is that he liberated Dachau and a couple of concentration camps. And, between those two experiences, it was great to hear the family history of being a veteran. I was raised in Fort Dodge, Kansas, the Kansas Soldiers Home, because my father could not maintain a job after the service. And back then, they allowed veterans and their families to be to be raised at the fort. And there's like 6, maybe 7 families that had kids. We all grew up together. And when we got older, we all went into service at different times. I was probably the crazy one that joined the Marine Corps, but the rest of them joined the Navy and the Air Force. My brother's a Navy guy, so serving in the military and enlisting and to the veterans back at the fort, when I got there, we had World War I vets and Spanish American War vets, and just started getting in World War II vets. And now the fort is basically getting in, Desert Storm and younger vets. I mean, it was a great place to understand the importance of the military and take pride in serving your country when you got old enough.
Great to hear that your backstory about your family history and with the military, and then you carrying out that tradition. That's great, Gerald. I didn't know all that, and I've worked for you for several years, so thank you for sharing all that.
Well, like most veterans, a lot of veterans do not talk a lot about their military service. And here's the math. There's 20 million veterans in the United States. There's a little bit over 1 million active military people. There's 8 to 900 reservists. Do the math. That's 22 million people wearing uniforms, protecting our democracy and our Constitution. That represents approximately 6% of our entire population as the front line for freedoms. That's important. And I think it's appropriate that at least one day a year that we recognize their service and their families on Veterans Day.
I agree, and I am so appreciative of you for all your service, and General Cross and Rihanna, thank you so much for your service, and all veterans out there that are listening or watching. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a meaningful Veterans Day. I feel like another podcast could have just been letting the three of you tell stories about your service together and ask probably a lot better questions than I did. But really, thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you for joining me today. And I wish you in advance a very happy Veterans Day. So again, for those who want more information on our Veterans Day event, you can go to jocogov.org/JoCo Honors Vets. Got a lot of information about the event, and also that's where you can see it live streamed. And then if you want to learn more about Veterans Treatment Court, you can go to courts.jocogov.org. So thanks to all for being here today, and thanks to those for joining us. Have a great day.
You just heard JoCo on the Go. Join us next time for more Everything Johnson County. Have a topic you want to discuss? We want to hear from you. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at JoCoGov. For more on this podcast, visit jocogov.org/podcast. Thanks for listening.